In my last two videos, I mentioned the word buttons a couple of times in regards to upcycling, and since then, buttons have kind of taken over my house and my life in a way. I've become a little obsessed, and it all started because I wanted to upcycle a pair of secondhand jeans into a bag and embellish the bag with buttons. I've made quite a few bags and I am super excited about these. I've had such a fun time making them, improving my sewing skills, and the process of individually hand sewing all of these buttons onto the flap has been such a meditative process, very similar to crocheting for me. There's also one more. It's a super cute little crochet town, the kind of matching bag to the cardigan that I made a couple of videos ago. I did a little photo shoot for them yesterday because I'm planning to sell them on my shop, and by the time this video is up they will be available, so feel free to check out my shop. It is amayasrealm.com. Your support would be greatly appreciated, and I'm just really excited to share these bags with you all and for once sell my handmade pieces. With all that said, I'm going to be making one more bag and sharing the process of how I make it in this video. I made a really basic step-by-step guide purely just for me to remember the order in which to do all the steps, because that is important, otherwise it doesn't quite work out how I want. It's very rainy and windy outside, so it's time for some cozy crafting. And let's get started. So I'm using a pair of thrifted jeans, and as you can see I've already cut up a leg for a previous bag, and I've got my collection of new and vintage buttons, and I'll also be using some fabric for the lining as well as padding to give the bag a bit more strength and structure. I'm starting by cutting up the side of the jean leg to create a bigger piece of fabric to work with. I made this card template to help with cutting a consistent size for the body. So I'm marking out the front piece and the back piece, and then also the front and back piece of the inner lining and inner padding. I found that it helps if the lining and padding is slightly bigger than the denim outer pieces. And now I'm cutting a flap. I probably should have a more accurate way of doing this, but I'm happy to just size it by eye. Each bag is unique anyway, and I just make sure the width of the flap is a little smaller than the width of the bag. I also like the flap to have rounded corners. And then cutting the straps between 6 to 8 centimeters in width and to a length that I like. This bag is going to be a longer crossbody bag, so 2 strips up the leg of the jean attached together is about that length. And lastly, I'd like to add an inner pocket, and for that I'm just going to seam rip the back pocket of the jeans. Although these ones are pretty big and I've actually already got a spare one from another pair of jeans, so I'll use that. The first of the sewing involves creating the bag flap. I'm putting the right sides together and sewing along the edge, but leaving the top edge open, the edge that'll be attached to the bag body. I'm also sewing it twice just to make sure it's all nice and secure. Then flipping it inside out and ironing it down to make it flat and neat along the edges. By the way, a lot of this process I learned from a YouTube video that was really helpful, and I've linked it in the description box below. It's almost button time. But first I'm going to cut a buttonhole for the actual functioning button closure. Making sure the button that I want to use fits the hole well. And then I'm stitching around the hole with a thin yarn. Now for my favourite part, I've got my selection of buttons in front of me to choose from. So for this embellishing part, I go in through the opening of the flap and hand sew each button, keeping all the thread on the inside of the flap. I'm sewing down each button with 3 to 4 rounds of thread, if that makes sense, and making a knot before moving on to the next button to make sure that they all stay tightly in place. I like to start at the bottom corner and make my way up and across. And we're back to sewing. I'm just connecting the 2 strips that I'm going to use as the bag strap so that it's long enough for a crossbody. And then I'm folding the long strip in half lengthways and clipping it together with the wrong side of the denim facing out. And then sewing it closed along the edge. Now I'm going to flip the long tube inside out using a safety pin. Just pushing the safety pin up and out through the opposite end. I've ironed it now to turn the tube more into a strap, and just sewing along the 2 long edges to keep it flat and looking good. Now we focus on the body of the bag, starting with attaching the pocket to the inner lining. I've got a side of the fabric lining and padding kept together and just pinning the pocket to the center of this lining and sewing it down. Also doing an extra line of stitching further in from the edge of the pocket. And I've got the denim body pieces now and sewing 3 sides of them together. Obviously leaving the 4th side open to be able to open the bag. I sew each side a couple times to make sure, and after flipping it inside out, it's ready to have the button flap attached. I'm not too sure how to best explain this part, but you can see how I'm doing it in the video. Also doing a zigzag stitch as well to keep that flap really securely attached. Now the strap goes on too, making sure it's not twisted when I clip both the ends onto the bag body for sewing. I'm sewing the lining together in the same way as the denim body pieces. And the denim body, with the flap and strap all laying flat and together, slides into the body lining. With the two sides of the straps lining up with the sewn sides of the lining. And let's sew all the pieces together. To be able to flip it inside out, the bottom of the lining needs to be seam ripped a bit. And here we go, the bag is revealing itself. So just got to sew the bottom of the lining together again. And tuck the threads in. Maybe this is optional, but just to make it neater and a bit more secure, I'm sewing along the top of the body again. And finally, just gotta add the big button for the flap closure. And here we have it, finished product. It managed to all come together, and I'm really happy with the selection of buttons on this one, potentially my favourite. So this bag is available to purchase along with a few others that I made. Feel free to check out my website, amayasrealm.com, and once again, your support means the world. Whether or not you purchase a bag, but just watching this video till the end, please give this video a like if you think it is worthy, and subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to see you around more. Thanks again for watching, I hope you like the bag, and I will see you next time.